Hey, Thomas, thank you for coming in today. You know, you're the Deputy Secretary General elect of the International Telecommunications Union, an amazing organization that's been around for close to 160 years. And you have this tremendous background of leadership and advisory and communication technologies and policy and so on. So really appreciate you coming in to chat with me today.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for this opportunity to chat.
So Thomas, you know, my audience consists of CEOs and investors, plus scientists and so on. So pretty broad. Uh,
Mhm.
they're always curious of, you know, you've got this great background. Are there maybe two or three inflection points that created this wonderful career you have and all of this impact that you're dedicated towards? And it could be when you were really young, or maybe when you're in college, or maybe afterwards.
Yeah, so first of all, I think having being born and kind of grown up and formed in the country that kind of went through the big transition, that's probably helpful, you know. So because I think in my lifetime, I saw Lithuania from exiting the Soviet Union into kind of transforming into, I would think these days we can call ourselves a developed country, at least we're members of OECD, you know. So and I think that also meant that transformational process and my kind of formation process, there was a lot of opportunities to contribute, and a lot of opportunities to contribute fast. So, still in my university, in the law school, I already was able to work as a lawyer. I was able to become a head of legal of Lithuanian regulators at age of 21, and that was actually was a time when that was all shaped. You know, the telecom networks, markets were liberalized. Regulator was being created. Lithuania was joining European Union, so it's like a lot of transformational process that you kind of then are able to contribute. And there's not that much, the broad expertise is is not always there. So if you're just enthusiastic and want to contribute, you are welcome to do that. So I think that was a really the good start for the whole journey, because that meant that it gives this boost, so then recognition of my contributions in the beginning, and at the age of 24 became a deputy director general of Lithuanian regulator, so it's like a really kind of quick boost that then you kind of build expectation. So that's kind of the first element. And then, of course, the second element, which I call more like my acceleration phase. So then realizing that once you have that boost, you kind of need more to do more, because like what you do, like a great, good career very fast, and then you stop, because then it becomes more difficult. So I really started exploring things but just kind of looking around, applying, someone recommended me to apply to the ads in The Economist and kind of looking around. So I did that. So that's how I went to Bahrain from Lithuania. Actually, I spent, I think, around 8 hours in Bahrain, through which I was interviewed and kind of offered the job. And then basically made the decision to move there, and it's kind of, and then you kind of get that bug of exploration, like Bahrain, British Virgin Islands, later Vanuatu, where you start building these different experiences as expertise as well. But you don't do that. Some people kind of say, some people want this linear career where you kind of, go and achieve things. But for me, these kind of, there was collecting of this experience that actually I think made me the way I am. And kind of giving this insight from different parts of the world, different people, kind of mixing with different cultures, really kind of shapes you. And maybe then the third aspect, which I really appreciate in my life, is what they call pit stops. So after my initial degree, I had a couple, a few of them, so one was in Harvard Kennedy School for a year for like a mid-career degree. Then later on, just a few years ago, in Sloan Fellows Program in London Business School, just this time to kind of step back and reflect and think, okay, what I'm doing, what I want really to do, absorb more information. Then, because sometimes you are in a job, you kind of focus on specific things, but sometimes it's good. And for me, my pit stops gave me opportunity to step back and think, what is the bigger world? What is the bigger picture? What do I want? What the world is kind of, where the world is going. And then with your renewed energy, you go back. So I think maybe these three elements kind of really, I guess, shaped me, so that kind of the initial start in a very transformative environment, then this exploration and mingling and mixing with different cultures and experiences, and then thirdly, taking pit stops from time to time.
I can definitely see, Thomas, then sort of the integration of all the pieces of your life. You know, from an educational standpoint, your master's degree in public administration from Harvard, and you've done work at the London Business School, and then on the telecommunication regulation policy from an education point of view, in your law degree that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And then you get into being, like deputy general director of the National Communications Regulatory Authorities in Europe, the Middle East, and the Caribbean, and so on, and being a government advisor and head of corporate strategy in different groups as well. And because you're working across cultures and so on, you're seeing all of those aspects, and that's informing you. So I can see why the International Telecommunications Union would be such a great fit for this part of your career. Can you give us a little bit of history of how you really embrace the ITU, or International Telecommunications Union? And some of the audience may not be familiar with the ITU, even though they're about 160 years old. But so can you give some of that background, and then how you got involved with them, and then I'll follow that up with what you plan to do in your current position that you're going to take or come into being in January of next year.
Right. Oh, thank you a lot. So I think that first of all, ITU is like, if you are in the telecoms field, and I was, when I started, this is your kind of focal point in the global environment. As for someone in health is World Health Organization, for someone in social issues, International Labor Organization, maybe some sort of cultural issues, UNESCO, and so on. And also, it's this rather small organization, and some people call it, and I think this is still the phrase, the most important organization that no one has heard of, and I think now more people are starting to hear about it, especially because of the digital becoming so important. But this is an organization that actually, if you are in the telecoms field, digital infrastructure field, you start to get engaged, especially because a lot of things that ITU does, it's actually pretty, impactful and consequential, from like satellite coordination, in terms of communication, satellite communications. And basically, if you want to launch a satellite to stationary orbit, you need to get ITU's kind of registration there, to broad kind of spectrum coordination. So if we talk about 5G, 6G, so none of these technologies can happen without ITU kind of agreeing on the frequencies to be assigned to that. Regular statistics. I see statistics of how many mobile phones, internet users, and all that we have in the world, to broad standards. And some people may be interested in knowing that it has 2 Emmy awards actually for the standards in broadcasting and quality and compression, including the famous MPEG-4 format. So, and then of course the development work, like trying to ensure that everyone has access to the digital world. So, it's this pretty broad portfolio for a small organization, but I think that's why we'll talk about, the priorities. That's why you kind of, have to find a way to achieve those priorities in an impactful and efficient way. So for me, that meant that throughout my career, that ITU was kind of, part of the career, part of the feature of this, and also in very early career, when I participate in ITU events, speak at them, participate in various forums, like we have Global Symposium for Regulators, which is a specific forum for regulators, especially heads of regulators, to different other formats, to then later on in my career becoming head of corporate strategy. So basically, joining ITU to do 2 things. One is really to kind of help organization to be much more efficient and effective, implementing what we call results-based management, so objectives-driven and impact-driven management. And then the second, actually, to making sure that ITU builds consensus around like some of the core topics of its mandate, including clarifies its role in cybersecurity, clarifies its role in internet-related public policy issues. So really kind of looking at those strategic policy issues and ensuring that ITU finds its place there, by the time not being the only organization there, but contributing to the ecosystem well. So, and then ITU became this place where I would kind of sometimes joke as a yo-yo ball would bounce back, So after head of corporate strategy in ITU, I moved to the private sector because I felt I want a bit more private sector experience, to see the things from the other side. And then came back to ITU when the COVID-19 hit, to kind of lead the COVID-19 program. So as a special advisor on crisis strategy, and especially on COVID-19 program, and how ITU kind of both responds and helps industry in that. And out of that came the idea for me to run for Deputy Secretary General of ITU and actually contribute to the ITU broader agenda. So I think, and that's what I kind of thought, that I kind of could bring to ITU both experience from the ground, from different organizations, from different national administrations, from different authorities and different needs, experience of the ITU from inside, and also private sector experience. So expectations to ITU to actually deliver in a way that private sector would find it meaningful and relevant as well.
So that's fascinating. Then your journey, and we earlier talked about you were leading in the national communications regulatory area, and then you were very much interested in the ITU and on the corporate strategy side, and then you went into working in private industry, and specifically, for example, as a group director of public policy at VEON, which is a multinational technology and communications company. And then you come back again into corporate strategy, a special advisor for a crisis on COVID-19 and partnership initiatives for the ITU, or International Telecommunication Union. And then you get the invite to say, hey, would you put your name up to be Deputy Secretary General elect? And you were nominated and won the election, and you take office in January. Just a fascinating sort of multi-sector spectrum that you bring into this ITU organization, which is an amazing organization. Can you talk about what your vision is then, working with your colleagues within ITU for 2023? You already talked about in the past, it was about things like digital inclusion, or we've talked about digital inclusion and cybersecurity and the regulatory aspects, also standards and compression and video and so on. ITU has won awards for that, and on the satellite side as well, and so on, and then in the mobile side. But can you talk about some of the specific areas that you have this sort of early idea about it in 2023? I know you're going to start building it in 2023, but can you provide a vision of what that looks like even today?
So yeah, so some parts, of course, is coming from my campaign messaging, but now kind of we from general implementing in the practice. And of course, ITU is like a complex, and even though it's rather small organization, pretty complex in governance, because we have 5 elected officials, which kind of different with different portfolios, and then you have to blend that together to achieve results. But I think from my perspective, I kind of wanted to put a few things on the table. And in my campaign, I was talking about them, and now we're going to implement. So one is what they call partnerships for connectivity. And what translates into practices means like a really strong industry engagement and making sure that we have a strategic industry engagement. And ITU, of course, is rather unique from your agencies that has always had some industry engagement. We have around 900 now coming to close to 1,000 sector members, so-called. So it's usually private sector members, companies, and so on. And then we have industry partners engaged in different advocacy bodies like Broadband Commission. But we also kind of would like to kind of see more industry engagement on a strategic direction setting level, and actually helping ITU and member states understand where the world is going, how to be relevant, and really progress in those common goals. And first to connect everyone, and then making sure that connectivity is meaningful, so that we build, digital services, digital enablement, if you will, for everyone around the world. But I think it starts with a kind of really being meaningful and useful for the industry, so that the industry contributes back to achieving those goals. And we're already having discussion with some with different industry players and industry associations to make sure that that we understand each other. And initial excitement I see, it really shows there's a lot of potential for that. Then second topic for me is always the sustainability and make sure that we play a role in addressing the climate crisis. And again, ITU does play the role there, both in the kind of helping the industry to start, to adapt, and then also helping to ensure the digital industry plays its role as such to kind of overcoming, or at least mitigating climate crisis. But I think we need to raise ambition, and then different ways, and we need to kind of package the two offering into one clear contribution to this global challenge. And I already speaking to all different ITU colleagues who are involved in that, and I see really good potential, really good drive. Also with external partners, we see that ability to kind of raise the ambition and to make sure that the ITU is more present and more impactful on the sustainability agenda. The third priority for me was always this call operational stuff, and this kind of sounds sometimes boring, because it's all about how you manage your finances, how you manage your human resources, how you manage your, operations, how you manage IT. But actually, UN, the ITU is a small part of UN. But if we can do it in the ITU, I hope we can also create an example how to do across the board. I know that our colleagues in different other organizations are also working hard to make sure to bring this kind of upgraded UN. And I think we want to do our piece, to make sure it's fast, efficient, responsive, really close to the members, implements fast as and accountable, but still is able to deliver results in a really kind of efficient and fast way. And I think this is, like, let's say, traditional management challenge that, of course, if all your manager listeners will recognize, and sometimes if you are kind of a senior management, you need to roll up your sleeves and go deep, not only on a kind of what you selling into who, but also like your engine, is so that is well oiled. And then the last thing is not a priority, but it's more like an approach, which we kind of keep signaling, and it's very important for me in this current geopolitical environment to ensure that the ITU remains and keeps being the platform that is kind of for all, and everyone comes to it and kind of is able to engage and discuss, regardless of all these tensions and not only tensions, the wars, that we're having, around the world, and then we, this big, so these tensions don't result in a kind of breakdown in international system. At least we can keep that system going, and to ensure that we still kind of find, ITU is a place to find common solutions to what they call common problems. And I think that's also when you talk, we're talking about the industry and others, and I still hearing very loud and clear from industry. Industry still needs global markets, still wants a global engagement, and still wants to kind of, to the extent possible, play the global game. And the challenges we face from COVID, which is still with us, even though we now pay less attention to the climate crisis, they're all global problems, And I think we as Command can all resolve them together. So we'll have to relearn to work together, even though now it feels very hard. And I think ITU needs to play that small piece by keeping all our membership together and ensuring that communication is going with the members. And that's not why it's not a priority, because it's more like about approach, how I engage with the members, how I talk to them, how we bring them together.
Thomas, so what I'm hearing then is, and I sort of go in reverse order, you talked about the ITU having this kind of convening facilitation capability and really being a neutral connector between your 193 member countries, and then also this deep engagement with industry. And you have a long history over, about 160 years of engaging in industry as well, right? So, and you have close to now 1,000 industry sector partners. And you're quite unique. So you're differentiated in that way, this long-term engagement, but you want to maintain that engagement as a neutral facilitator. That's what I'm hearing. And you want to be efficient, and you want to deliver value, and you want to make sure you're responsive, because really industry in particular is really keyed on that execution, making sure that you're not just talking a particular area, but you're doing something about it. So, and then I'm hearing that you want to also address, the connectivity issues as a legacy. It's a continuing item. You have this partnership on connectivity. I saw some posts that it's like in the billions that are being committed.
Yeah,
I think that's quite amazing if you can get that kind of support, and all the other programs, well, climate, of course, but bringing this perspective that you can unite these 5 different sort of schools or business units within ITU and this common front on these global challenges like climate. And resilience would be something that I think would be important to you as well. Do you have any additional comments on that? For example, on the partnership of connectivity, is that billions?
So this is a partnership Partner to Connect is actually the program that the future Secretary General, Doreen Bogdan, my future boss or future boss again, because I worked with her already a few times, had started as her in her tenure as a director of development for ITU, which is also like a position. I think this also shows that the right strategy and right action which you took, can actually deliver the results and can bring engagement. And also, we have, I think, now close to 30 billion worth of pledges. So she just ran this event, I think, last week, where the first annual event of Partner to Connect. And of course, now is the time also to start doing follow-up and to make sure that those pledges translate in real action. So I think this is an example that, ITU, and I think that this example of initiative She Started is an example that sometimes we forget that our biggest value is not just specific projects we implement. It's not only like specific things we do, but also what they call attention we have and the kind of convening power we have. And I think once we kind of, as an ITU, work on the right goals and right vision, bring right partners around the table, and convene them with in a compelling way, I think we can have these great results. And I think we need more of those in the future. That's why when I talk about partnerships for connectivity in a kind of broader sense, I think I would like to build on that, and making sure that we definitely have different aspects of industry, to of course working for the building that, making sure that the different aspects for connectivity are tackled, different industry kind of groups are engaged, and even some people who kind of in the past may not have known ITU that much, especially like investor community, it's really there, because investor community now is really discovering digital infrastructure as an asset class, in a big way in the last few years. But I think they haven't yet fully discovered ITU as a kind of play in that. So I think also connecting them and bringing them and making sure that they also kind of contribute to the longer term view, being like a really kind of connectivity to make sure that it's, digital infrastructure is more valuable for everyone, be it sustainability to make sure that when we deliver on that, we deliver in the way that contributes to the solution to the climate crisis and doesn't contribute to the problem. Be it a contribution across the kind of all sustainable development goals. I think it's very important. So really important for it to be that focal point for convening everyone.
Because I work across CEOs and investors and sovereign funds, I do see a common interest in this area of resilience, but also on the infrastructure, making sure that there's investment in the infrastructure, so there's reliability and also an enhanced capability, sort of the smartness of all of that, and to ensure that disruptions and risks are mitigated. So again, ITU could play such an important role in this area, as you mentioned, convening, and you have such a long history working with all the different sectors and bringing them together. Can you talk about, what your term is, and then do you plan to hopefully re-up once your term is over, or talk about how this election process works? The audience may not be aware.
Yeah. So, so first for election process, and also it's, as I mentioned, that you has a few elected officials and they all elected directly. What does it mean elected directly? That means 193, at least in theory. It's a bit less few in practice because not everyone kind of comes to our parliamentary conferences, but it was a good attendance this time. So every country has a vote, and every country decides who they would vote for. So I'm very grateful to our member states that they gave me the mandate to be the next Deputy Secretary General. And with a very, very strong and clear mandate. So I also took it as a really confirmation that the messages I was sharing with member states, and I mentioned some of the priorities there before, they really resonate with member states. I also took it as a mandate member states want renewal a little bit, like building on the legacy of, as is rightly said, nearly 160 years, but at the same time, a little bit of upgrade. Like always say, like ITU has a pretty great hardware, but our software consistently needs to be upgraded. So I think member states kind of also agreed with me on that. And also, I think also took it as a complex, seeing that all other kind of elected official positions and the council elections and others. I also, I'm really happy that member states kind of really selected a strong team to lead that organization. And it's really an honor to be part of that team. So my mandate is 4 years. working, as I said, in the role of Deputy Secretary General, which is in many ways a support of Secretary General. The new one will be Doreen Bogdan. It's also like in many ways in Chief Operating Officer role, but also someone who tries to kind of keep the whole organization working as one. I really kind of want to do a good progress on this objective, so I said, and seeing that at the end of that 4-year mandate, we have an organization that's much more fast, agile, resilient also as well, and kind of is able to deliver to the member states. It also really ramps up on things like I mentioned, like, really is relevant and engaging with industry, really delivers on sustainability agenda, and still keeps the whole membership together and talking. And that's very important. Now, what will happen next, that's a kind of, for me, is a long term. Anything for me beyond 2 to 3 years is a long term. So my career has been developing pretty fast. So that's why I always like to look at my every stage as a project. So my next 4 years is a good project. I think when these next 4 years will be coming closer to that, there will be a decision, and my decision whether I would think that I still have something to contribute, like I need to kind of continue, and then will be member states' decision whether we think about that, so, but that's, I think, still too early to talk.
Well, Thomas, we've covered a lot of different areas. We definitely have a good sense of the ITU and its history and its legacy, but it's its mandate for the future, led by the newly elected team, the executive team running the ITU. This very interesting and very unique UN agency, because you have this deep engagement with industry, but also with countries as well. And you're used to working on combining all of that, convening all of that to produce standards and work on technology and being embraced. They're being utilized for the benefit of humanity and the benefit of Earth ecosystems. I have one closing question, and that is, what are your recommendations to the audience?
I mean, my recommendations, so of course, as you said, your audience is very diverse, so it's like, it's very important to, I think everyone will take what they want from this, but I think there's kind of a couple of key takeaways, So I think that first of all, the world is not in an easy place, and sometimes we get a kind of bit of a despondent, and especially when we look from the global debate, and we sometimes hear global leaders talk. It's not like very optimistic talk these days, So I think not to get despondent, not to kind of, to keep the hope up and to keep the action up, I think that's because I think these bad days or challenging days will come to pass, And the thing is very important for us whether we keep the right structures in place, whether we preserve what's good now, and whether we keep talking with each other, whether we keep engaging, so that when the better days come, we don't start from the scratch, and we kind of are prepared and are ready. And I think the people who will, if you will win in the future, the people who will not like now, will just wait out for the better days, but will actually put the ground now to strengthen themselves, to become more resilient, but keep engagements, keep the links to different parts of the world and different stakeholders, So then when the more openings will be there, they will be ready to go up, and do this. And then, of course, in that also, so that's kind of more like a thinking thing. And then, of course, that digital is here for us to stay, and it's very important. I think it's also our responsibility, and and the kind of thing to kind of make sure that everyone is in the digital world. That's also good it's also good from social side, but it's also good from economy. It's bigger markets, bigger abilities to kind of engage, bigger talent pools, bigger abilities to leverage, more jobs for the people inside their own countries, regardless, what level of development those countries are, and so on. So I think really kind of bring a digital world for everyone. I think it makes for us all better. And then the last thing, of course, not forgetting that the crises and the challenges we face are common, including the biggest one of those is the climate crisis. So the only way we can tackle them if we have enough urgency, but to also try to, and back that's my theme, work together on those. So I think this is kind of my my kind of parting thoughts. So not being despondent in these very challenging times, but keep getting ready for the future and preparing for the future. Investing in digital, and then together really contributing to facing our challenges of today, including the climate crisis.
Those are great last recommendations to our audience. And I should mention the ITU is an open platform, in essence, an open community. So if people have an interest in climate, they can say, hey, where can I participate in that conversation? Or
Exactly.
if they're interested in resilience and some of the other aspects, they can say, where can I participate in some way? So again, Thomas, thank you for coming in and sharing so much of your background, but also your vision for the ITU, and really an outstanding UN agency. Thank you again for coming in.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Really a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.